Hello and welcome back to our episode. We are still looking at classes and then object. Now today we are going to look at one of the most important principle in OOP. We call the encapsulation principle. Now the encapsulation principle states that in our attribute should be protected from outside misuses. This is our attribute, okay, and we have to protect them from outside misuses. So let me just add one thing here. So we've created our object with a parameterless constructor, and it's having the name, the color, the texture. If you look at what we have, you can see we are giving a name, but approach of giving a name is we call the object, assess the name on it, and then what? Assign a value. This is not something we have to do in programming. If you do this, it means you have exposed the attribute to the outside world. And if it like this, it can be a bit risky in your code. So what we can do to prevent this is we have to use the encapsulation principle. Okay, the encapsulation principle. Now earlier on when we started this episode, I told you that I will explain the meaning of the public and then the protected. Okay, the meaning excuse me, the meaning of the public and the others. So let me take everything out now. Pair dot, you see, whenever I use the dot notation, I get access to what? The name and then texture and then color. This is not supposed to be done. Okay, it's not supposed to be done. So how do we enforce encapsulation in our code? What we'll do is we make sure that the attribute, okay, will have access modifier of private. We give them access modifier of what? Of private. So this is how it's supposed to be done. Private. So now the attribute is having private access modifier. Okay, now you see we have the private here, and then down here is simply the what? The attribute. Let me just clear the air. It's possible sometimes you also see it done this way: private colon and then private colon. So this is not wrong. You can also do it like this. It's also accepted. Okay, you can do it like this. It's also accepted. If you change it back to how I did it, it's also going to work. You see, the private is here and then the attribute are all under it. So it's trying to tell you that whatever that comes under the private is having the access modifier of private, same as what how I changed it first. And then we have the public. So you see, public is here. It's trying to tell you that all that comes down here are all under the public access modifier, so they will be seen everywhere. Now this one is private. We come to the int main where we create object. If I try to give the object a name, watch carefully, you can see the color here now is red. Now whenever the color is red, it means don't go there. It means it's having access modifier of private. And with private, if you try to set the value straightforward like this, it's never going to allow you. You get a red indicator there. Okay, so the red is trying to tell us that what we are trying to do, or the object attribute you are trying to manipulate is not visible. So I'll go to the view logs. Let me allow the log screen down here, so we check the kind of error. So this is the error. It says name, fruit name is private within the context. So since it's private within the context, that means don't go there. It's private, so there's no way you can have access to it. So when you give private access modifier to your attribute or even method, they can be used in the class. The relevance of them will be in the class. If you go outside, you can't use it. See, we are using this dot name, this arrow in the name in the class. But when we come outside the class, okay, when we are outside the class and then inside the int main, we have no accessibility. There's no way we can access that. Okay, so how do we do this? Because we have created the object with the parameterless, and the parameterless doesn't have any values by default. So by default, let me just call the print info to see some kind of information about the object we have created. When I execute, you are going to see that the name, the color, the texture is all what? Blank. And now trying to set the name to, we have some kind of limitation because it's private up there. Okay. This is where we need to go by what we call getters and then what? Setters. Getters and then setters. Getters and then setters. So pair dot name. So we will need two separate functions in our class. Now the job of the setters, okay, or the setter function is going to do what we wanted to do here. And then the goal of the getters will also do what you think we are trying to do. So over here, we want to set a name for the pair. So we will have to create a function we call the setter function. And that setter function will be responsible for setting names for the attribute. Then what we are trying to do is we want to access, okay, we want to get the name on the object. So to do this, we have to also call the getter function. That will be responsible for getting us the value of the object each time we want. Okay, so to do that, right under the constructors, let me come down and then I'll add a comment: getters and setters. Okay, so for the getters and setters, let me just show you something small I have here, some kind of note. So the essentials: getters and setters are methods used in object-oriented to control access to a class private data. Okay, now a class private data, you can simply see that over here these data are private. So in order for us to have access to them, that's where we need to use the getters and then what? Setters. They are vital for encapsulation, which means keeping an object's internal internal workings hidden and protected. We don't want to expose the attribute to the outside world. We don't want it to be misused. Okay, why they matter? So they allow you to validate the data before it is set. Okay, and aside that, they also prevent bad data. Okay, they prevent bad data. So this is about the getters and then what? Setters. Okay, something small about the getters and also the setters. Okay, so we have the first one being the set name. Okay, so getters and setters. Now this is what we call the setter function, and this is what we call the getter function. So the setter is responsible for what? Setting the name of the attribute, the name on the object. Now this one is just like the parameterized constructor. You see it's taking a name up here, and then down here we are doing a mapping. We are mapping the object's name to whatever that will come from the parameter. Okay, so we've mapped the name to the what? To the parameter. This way, when you call the function, you are expected to pass a value, and that value you pass will be what? Will be mapped to the object's name. And then the getter function is simply returning the what? The name. So you are not going to access it just like this. It will not allow you. You need to what? Call the get name. And whenever we use the get name function, it will get us the name of the object. Simple as that. Now let me show you some of the things to take note of. The setter functions, they are always void unless you have your special reason to use any other return type. But setter functions are always void. Why are they void? Because they are just setting the name for the object. Apart from setting the name for the object, they don't want to do anything. They don't want to return anything. So they have a task to perform, and right after they are done performing that task, that settles it. They don't want to do any other thing again. So since this method was performing a task and then we're not expecting any value to emerge, to come out from it, what we do is we give it a type void to tell the function that perform an action but don't come out with any value. So this you are seeing here, is always going to follow the approach. Void will come and then the set keyword. So set keyword is constant, always add it. If you change it, it will still work, but it's recommended that you follow what is there. You go by the rule. So set will come and then the name of the attribute you are dealing with. That is the name attribute. You get it? So set name will also come. Then right from there, you have to add a parameter in the setter function. So string name is the setter function. Yes, string name is the parameter. Now over here, you see, we know perfectly that the data type for name is what? Is string. So since the data type for name is string, that's why the parameter is also having a string data type. Because at the end of the day, we are doing some kind of wiring up. We are mapping this attribute to the object's, attribute. We are mapping this parameter to the object's attribute. So the parameter name is mapped to the attribute name. You get it? So both of them should be compatible. Since the attribute on the object is string, what you are mapping or what you are giving it should also be what? String. So this is how it's always going to be. Your void will come, your set, and then the attribute will follow. When you move from there, you go inside, you add your what? Your parameter, and then you do the mapping. That is it. Then for the setter, for the getter, the goal of this function is to get us the name of the attribute. Okay. So get will come and then the attribute what follows. You don't do anything. Getter functions, they don't need any parameter. They are only getting you something. They don't want to get anything from the parameter. So they avoid, unless you have your special reason. But most times, this is how this is going to be. And then when you finish, you just return this name. So return this name simply means give us a name attribute. The value of it, just give it to us. So always your getter function, the goal is to get you something. So the data type of what they are getting you should come as the what? The return type. So meaning name is string, right? That's why the getter function is also having a string here. So the getter and then setter, the data type to use in a parameter and also to use as the return type for the getter function should be compatible with the object, the attribute you are dealing with. So if name is string, here should be string, here should be string. If it was age we are dealing with, then we have to actually make sure that here will be age, here will be int, here to be what? It will be int. So this is the getter and then setter for the name alone. We will need the two of these functions for all the attribute we have. But before, let's now experiment. So pair dot set name. So pair dot set name, then we have passed pair there. It means give us a name, but the name should be pair. Now this is going to work fine. Okay, this is going to work fine. But how do we see, or how do we get the name of the pair? This time around, we are not going to go by this approach again. Because of the private access modifier, this line will not work. So for better way of getting the attribute value, you call the get what name function. This get is responsible for getting you the values. So you run the program now, you can see what we are getting is what is pair. Now let's move on to that side to explain some few points. Now set name takes a name you want to set. That's why calling the set name I pass pair. So the pair will just be mapped to the object name. This name, so that means the name of the object, is simply going to be what? Pair, what we passed here. Okay. And then the get name at the end of the day is returning the object name. They are private outside, but within the class they can be used. So we've exposed the get name to return the private field. That is what the getter function is doing, and it will always return you your value. Okay, so that's the goal of the getter and then setter. We will do that for all of them. So getters and setters, again, you come down, void set color. If they are setting the color, we have to allow them to type the color they want to set, and then when they finish, let me just skip it so that we move fast. Okay, so the getter and then setter for function for the color attribute is done. So you can see set color and then get color. Set color, first of all, what's the data type of color? String, right? The data type of color is string. So the setter function for the color, we are exposing the string color parameter in the function. So when they call this function, they are expected to what? Pass a color. And the color they passed will be what? Will be stored, or will just be, inside the color attribute like that. And then the getter function will also get you the color. Okay. So this is how always is going to follow. This is how always is going to follow. Now let's add the last one. So you can see void set texture and then string texture. Whatever the type, we are storing that in the texture. And then get texture is also there. You call the get texture is simply returning this texture. So that is what the texture function is achieving, or that is what is doing. Okay, that's what it's doing. So that is about the getters and then setters. So I will come down here and then pair dot set color. Let me make it yellow. The texture is smooth. So always when you want to actually set values for the object, we use the setters, and if we want to get the values, we use the what? The getters. So get color. Okay, don't forget your round bracket, it's very important. So cout pair dot get texture. Your round bracket should come, and then you end it. Now when you run the program like this, you can see that we did the setting up here. Okay, we give them information there, and then the cout getters are working. It's getting us the names. If we take off this one and then we run the program again, you realize there's nothing in there, even though you see the blank space there. Okay, but there's no values in them. So that's the goal of the setters. They are simply used for setting values for the attribute. Okay, all right. Now I'll conclude this with one additional field. So let me add double of price. So every fruit will have a price. Let me add that to the parameterized constructor as well. Double price. And then we do the wiring up. This price is equal to the price. Okay. And then in the parameter list, we also add that the price is equal to 0.0 by default. So each object by default will have 0.0 as the default price. You have to, unless maybe it's specified, before it will change. So now that we have the two, how many? We just added one, right? So we need a getter and then setter function separately for the price to as well. So void set price. What's the data type of price? You know it's double, right? Like that, like that. So this price is equal to price, like this. And then when you finish, we need a getter function. So we want to get price, and the data type of the price is double. So double comes, and then get price. This function just what? Returns. So this price. So this is the getter and then setter function for the price. Okay. I will add that to our print info as well. So I just added price throughout. Okay. In case you see something, if not, and we don't understand, don't worry. Just go back to the previous videos. All of them are actually there. Okay, all of them are there. All right. Now we have the setup function too for the price. You have the getter, everything set up. Now I'll go back to the int main down here, and to set the price, we call the pair dot set price. So 2.9, that's the price we have set. Let's try to actually get it. So pair dot get price, and the get price function is called. So we run the program now, and you can see 2.9 as well. Okay, so it's very important. Now what are some of the things to look out for? It's very common that maybe sometimes you call a function and it doesn't work. So if you forget this line, for instance, okay, even though you pass your value, but because you are not doing the wiring, because you are not doing the mapping, your object will fail to get the what? The value. So watch this. Even though we call the get price, but it's not getting us the actual price, it's 0 there. That's because the setter function failed to map the attribute to the parameter. So now this is it. Always, this is the approach for your getter and then setter. And by doing this, we are actually, utilizing, or yes, following the principle of encapsulation. Okay. Now, one last advantage of using this is we can decide to add validation to our data. Let's say we want to set the price and then we make it negative 2.5. Okay. Negative 2.5 is still going to work. You see, negative 2.5 is working. But under normal circumstance, you know that no fruit, which fruit is having negative as its price? Okay. So we can decide to use if statement to do some kind of validation. We can say that, the values we will accept in the setter function will be the ones that, have some kind of validation. So like if the price is greater than 0, then in that case we want to what? We want to set, or want to do the mapping. Else we just want to display that, the price is not valid. You get it? So with setters and then getters, setters will allow us to even have more control on the kind of data we want our attribute to receive. So for this one, for instance, we are saying that price will only be accepted if it's what? Greater than 0. So this time around, if you run the program, you see we first have what? -9 is not a valid value. So it's 0 there. Instead of it to be -9, it will take you to the default one from the parameterless constructor. You see, they are all having default of 0. You get it? But without the setters, this wouldn't have been possible. Okay. So you can be adding some kind of checks to the kind of value you accept in your in the object attribute. Okay, so this is constructor. This is getters and setters. They are actually used for, you know, having access to private fields of your most of the time your attribute, and they are used to actually, make sure we perform some kind of validation on our data we receive. And also they serve as interface through which we can interact with the private fields of the class. This is actually part of it. You don't take it off. Okay, so from now following from from now forth, most of the classes we will create, they are all going to follow the getters and setters. You see us using print info, like all that we've done here. Try and then stick to them and watch them very well. I want to thank you so much for the time you stayed with me. I will continue in the next lesson. Bye bye.